Everybody, it's 9 o'clock, and so and I'm Mark Vantine. So Kent Holsinger is not able to join us. He is on Zoom, and we can see his beautiful profile there. But he's asked me to facilitate the meeting today, so I'm going to do so. So it's exactly 9 o'clock, and I called this meeting of the board meeting of the Colorado Aeronautical Board to order. So let's start first with, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with justice and justice for all. Great, thank you very much. If you would, if you have cell phones, kindly silence those, which is important. So our first order of business is to see if there's any amendments to the agenda.
None from staff, Mr. Vice
Chair. Can I, anything from the board? Okay, so the agenda stands as written. Next is approval of the minutes from the June 6, 2024. Any comments from the board on minutes, any edits or changes from staff? I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June 6, 2024.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next, item 4 is public comments, and the board welcomes public comments. You know, and public comments are just that. It's an opportunity for us to hear from the public. We won't respond, but certainly enjoy hearing what the public has to say. So, Sean?
None at this time.
Anybody in the room like to make a public comment? All right. All right, well, I'll close public comments and we'll go on to the board member reports. So, Andrew, you want to start at your end?
Yes, sir. We are busy out on the Eastern Plains with lots of construction projects. Lyman's pretty quiet this year, but they're still working on a taxiway extension. Talked to Greg, Allen, and Ray. They're trying to find contractors for a taxiway project, having some difficulty there. Got Yuma, Scott Moore out of Yuma. They're working on a taxiway replacement starting in September. They also wanted me to point out, and Hetty, I'm not sure if you know about this yet, but they've got a fly-in breakfast on the 28th of September. That last year it was socked in foggy half of the day, and the worst thing that could happen for a fly-in breakfast is fog. But they're going to try it again this year, and hopefully get some better weather. So Akron, they're still working on a ramp project for next year. Just got a ramp project done at Sterling, which was pretty neat to get that project wrapped up. I know they've been working hard on that. Charlie also wanted to let you guys know that on Labor Day weekend is the Ben Lowell Aerobatic Shootout Competition. Saturday, Sunday, that's the 31st and through the 1st. There's going to be a breakfast there. There's going to be food trucks, and so I'm going to see some cool airplanes and some aerobatics. That'll be a good weekend. So that's Labor Day weekend coming up here. Let's see. Another good opportunity in Pueblo. I'm not sure if I think it's been kind of posted out, but next year, that'd be September 27th to the 28th, is the Wings of Pride Air Show at Pueblo. We're gonna have the Thunderbirds there next year. That's gonna be really cool. Also, Greg is they've got 5 airlines that are interested for taking over the essential air service there. They're having a meeting with the airlines. I believe it was yesterday, actually. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that and who they decide on for essential air service there at Pueblo. As far as other things going on, we've got, oh yeah, Jeff, you've got let's see, September 5th, the 40th anniversary, the reception dinner at the Museum of Nature and Science, right, for the 40th anniversary. And then, and then Family Fun Day on the 7th.
Yes.
And last time I talked to you, you work on a fog seal repaint on the taxiway and the ramp. Is that still in process, or?
That, and then also some taxiway rehab with some of the bill grant funding as well, so.
It's great to see all this, a lot of rehab, a lot of new pavement going down out here on these little airports on the Eastern Plains. And Burlington is the same way. We're actually just talked to my contractor this morning. We're going to start on our big taxiway project on September 9th. So we'll be replacing all the taxiways, all the connectors, getting new real lights out there, replacing our ancient strobe real lights with some fancy LED ones. Getting a generator, kind of combining a lot of projects in one. It's going to be a really, really good year for us as far as projects and take care of us in the future. I also wanted to point out, and also a thank you for the other members of the board that approved our grant. If you look on the screen, we got our new screens for the simulator, which are quite a bit bigger than the old ones. Allow us to do a lot more VFR type training on the sim. That young pilot is my middle kid. And for you pilots in the room, I put him in the clouds and he flew a precision approach all the way down to minimums. I gave him the flight director. He got to cheat a little bit, but he didn't use the autopilot. He hand flew an approach all the way down to the ground. So these new screens, which are offered, they weren't offered at the time that we got our sim last year, but they are an addition now. That's like 170 inches of screen area from one side to the other. It's just awesome. So with that, I like to have our kid count, the amount of kids that have got to fly the simulator. We're up to 421 kids since last June that have got to fly the simulator and try it out. So it's a pretty cool deal. We had a group through the Falcon Air Lab. They had a grant from the Daniels Foundation, and they've done this with a few other airports in the state, but they chose us as one of the airports where they come out, they bring pilots and airplanes, and it's just aviation morning. You go jump in an airplane, go for a ride, and then we do lunch. But then we had 7 airplanes. This was earlier in August. 7 airplanes come out. One of them was a Cessna 421. These kids got to go fly in a pressurized twin Cessna and had a couple of RVs and a couple of Cessnas, and it was a really great experience. We had about 20 kids that got to participate in that, and so that was an excellent deal thanks to the Falcon Air Lab and also the Daniels Foundation, which was the grant. So that's all I have. So.
Great report, thank you.
Thank you.
Kenny?
So on the beautiful western slope of Colorado, we've had some interesting, see some pictures up there. We had, for the first time, our EMAS was installed in 2009, and we had a Hawker 900 go off the end of the runway, aborted at departure, and ended up entering the EMAS, and 200 feet, it's 300 feet long, off the end of the runway, and took up about 200 feet, pirouetted off the nose wheel as to where it's positioning kind of almost a 180 or 120. And it's estimated that it hit that EMAS going between 70 and 90 knots. We have the video of it, and it was unbelievable. But it did exactly as it was supposed to do, and pilots were obviously probably had to change their shorts after that deal, but yeah, it did what it was supposed to do. And the interesting thing is as it entered that EMAS, initially we were thinking it would be minor damage, if you will, but the nose wheel was pretty trashed, as you can imagine, and all that dust from that basically dusted concrete was ingested into those engines, and they could not shut the engines down because the force on the nose of the aircraft really disconnected the controls from the cockpit to the engine, so they couldn't do anything. And the only thing that was mentioned was that when they attempted, I guess they could say that they didn't quite hit V1 on their departure, but they attempted to shut it down. Maybe it was a tire that blew, whatever it was, and tried to activate the reversers, and they did not activate. So that's why it entered. So quite a scary situation. Kudos to our crew. I had to get a crane out there. Happened around 1:45 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, and they had it removed by 7:30.
Wow.
So it was pretty impressive that they were able to do that, getting a crane there and everything. So the interesting thing is the follow-up, and if anyone's not aware, is Telluride is the only airport in the whole Northwest region that has EMAS. So that seventh state, even you figure with the state of Washington or some of those coastal states, that we are the only ones that have EMAS. And there are some high maintenance issues, maintenance that go along with that. But again, probably estimated that we have maybe $500,000 worth of damage. 150 blocks, they're 20-inch high blocks, and about 150 of those blocks were damaged. And and then the FAA did remind me that we have about 45 days to repair EMAS.
Hurry up.
So always, getting that support is wonderful. So, and the big question I think a lot of people ask is, well, who pays for that? And the insurance company of that aircraft operator would be billed for that. And you figure that airplane is probably, they've evaluated, Textron was out at the airport, and it's pretty likely that thing is in the process of being totaled. So now I just want to get it the hell off the airport.
Any public response and press, was that, to the accident, but the fact that we have that equipment, was that highlighted?
It's kind of one of those things, Mark, that the answer is of course I let my board know, and that's all it went. And actually sometimes no news is good news.
Okay.
And you don't want to highlight, you don't want this to be perceived by the general public that this airport is in any way hazardous to flying. I argue it's no different than any other airport. They all have their unique climate things. So the fact that there was no real big deal about this is, it'll probably be some things written about it over the next several months within the industry.
Right.
But beyond that, no, and I wasn't calling the newspaper. So that's
No negative response.
But no negative, no, the negatives, everybody was like, thank God for the foresight of predecessors of the airport to the FAA, and this is exactly why you have it. And I was beginning to think that maybe my whole career at Tex, we would never have this happen. So much for that idea. So my response when I notified the FAA, I said, well, it works.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
the other things going on on the western slope, Grand Junction and Montrose have announced currently operating Breeze Airways is going to be flying in and this winter into Montrose, so we're excited about that. And then the airport has embarked on an ambitious construction of a large 30,000 square foot, total 40,000, because it's going to be a combination, a hangar, a transient hangar. As if you're not aware, we just have one 15,000 square foot hangar, and as Jeff could probably attest, certainly during the winter months, you really love that. That space is very valuable, especially up there, and to be able to have additional options and have storage for aircraft, because the demand has always been there. So we're excited. We broke ground in May, and they hogged out about 35,000 cubic yards of earth in our long-term parking lot. And then they're pouring foundation, and the walls, the concrete walls, 15-foot high walls are going to be, are currently, the forms are being set up to pour these walls. And the one thing, it's not going anywhere, that's for sure, because it's the foundation and the micropiles and everything else is quite interesting. And then finally, we are also embarking on development design on the south side, which is taxiway and some apron and an overall site grading plan for not only an overflow parking opportunity, because we just don't have a lot of parking, and we have a film fest coming up, which is our biggest event of the summer. And you want to talk about a hell of a jigsaw puzzle, the amount of traffic we do get during that, and that's one of the reasons why we need to build a taxiway to the south and some aprons, some overflow apron parking and alternatives. So we're excited to get that started. And ultimately, we want to build smaller hangars for our based aircraft that we have a wait list of 41 people. So there's definitely a demand. It's just getting the infrastructure is going to be extremely expensive. But hey, it's the first step. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Ken.
Brittany?
All right, I am Trimby Zabo. No picture for me? Nothing up on the, no, I'm just looking to see what you guys put up there. I should have sent you a picture of the probe, like the
There you go.
hypoxia chamber that we brought in. Dang, okay, well, anyway, I'll talk about that. All right, the pilot organization's representative for Colorado. Right now, Colorado Pilots Association has 718 active members, which is huge. That's just Colorado Pilots Association, that's not all of our pilot organizations, but I wanted to point that out because that's pretty huge. Hetty will talk about how the Colorado Pilots Association and CDOT went together to Oshkosh. I'll let you chat about that, and a couple other people. Let's see, we got an annual meeting coming up for CPA, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but Gary Toby's gonna be the speaker. Did you guys know he's done 188 combat missions over in North Vietnam? So he's your speaker, so don't wanna miss that. That's pretty cool. Let's see, they're gonna do a CPA Presents at Wings Over the Rockies. Chuck Stout's the curator there, he's gonna talk about that. Those dang little airplanes menace or necessity. Are they still doing a tower tour out here? I think they were gonna do a tower tour out here on Monday,
Who's that?
CPA.
They might be, I just might,
Oh, okay,
my
yeah,
team's white-handed.
that's one of the things, yeah. Yeah, CPA is working with the AOPA Backcountry Coalition and connecting what we do here. Keith Stokes is working with AOPA and just connecting everything we do here for our backcountry flying with AOPA. So it's all cohesive and everybody who wants to fly here can go through AOPA. And speaking of that, at Oshkosh, mountain flying, standing room only, over 200 people came to watch Bill Standifer speak about mountain flying, safety of Colorado flying. Hetty can talk more about that as well. And they have this Saturday a mountain flying course at Centennial, or at, it's at Centennial this Saturday. Let's see, we've got this great Flight Lines publication through Colorado Pilots Association. Anybody who wants to submit an article for the Flight Lines, I mean, they have a lot of members to read this Flight Lines newsletter. They're seeking that. We'll reach out to James Zucker for that. Let's see, they got a poker run on October 14th scheduled. And they have a new social chair named Jordan Bishop. Let's see. The education portion of Colorado Pilots Association is that Ames Community College is gonna host a huge event, 14th of September. So bring kids, spread the news about that. Hetty, you might talk about that more as well. Let's see, what else? Colorado Air and Spaceport was supposed to be on August 26th, 3 to 5, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see, Angel Flight West is coming up with an annual golf classic and ball drop on September 27th. And CABA has a members luncheon, which I believe is on Friday. Down at Centennial, you get into, I think it's a Global Praetor, or it's a really nice aircraft. You get lunch and get to go inside the aircraft. It's usually what they do at these CABA luncheons. Civil Air Patrol had a huge report. In June and July, they flew respectively 291 and 307 missions, or not powered flights, I should say. Just in July, they did 3 glider flights out of Boulder, so just another reason to keep the Boulder airport open. Getting the Colorado, the Civil Air Patrol, you know, as you guys know, it's the Civil Air Patrol is Junior Air Force ROTC and it's Air Force ROTC cadet orientation flights. So these are massive flights, just another reason to keep Boulder open because they're training out of there. And since last October, Civil Air Patrol has gotten almost 2,700 flights. So training the youth as well as the missions where they go in search and rescue and whatnot. Yeah, so that's Civil Air Patrol. 99s has a poker run September 21st that starts at Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. And Women in Aviation has a huge event coming up. They're hosting the National Women in Aviation Conference at the Gaylord in March. As you guys know, Colorado's aviation aerospace mega for the United States. So it's gonna be a huge turnout. And Mark's helping me find some contacts at some of the bigger aerospace companies to either come to the Girls in Aviation Day or host or be a speaker or show, have a tour, something like that. So Women in Aviation is really prepping up for that, and of course they're active as well in other things. I believe that's my report. Let me just check.
Mike Fronefeld wanted to add on, that's a Dassault Falcon 8X that will be at the Colorado Aviation Business Association event.
Dassault Falcon X. Thank you, Mike. Yeah. And a huge shout out to Mike Fronefeld. Thank you for hosting, or for, I should say, Wings Over the Rockies hosted my hypoxia chamber. And Mike Fronefeld unloaded the hypoxia chamber and reloaded it back. It came from the FAA. It had to get unloaded and it had to get reloaded and sent back to the FAA. And so thank you, Mike, for getting a huge tractor out there to unload it. It was awesome. I thought that was more exciting actually than the Purdy mat. But anyway, we got up almost 225 pilots and a few air traffic controllers hypoxic over a 4.5 day period. It was awesome. Yeah. That's it. That's my report. Thank you.
As always, extremely excellent report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No pressure, Steve.
Oh, it's my turn. It's already going bad. I didn't know we could get pictures to be put on for the. Just a couple of quick items. Colorado Airport Operations Association is hosting the Basic and Advanced Airport Safety Operations Specialist, or ASOS class. It's going to be at the Colorado Springs Airport. It's free to all the member airports, so that's really a huge value. So it's approaching quickly, so if you're interested, go to the website and sign your people up if they've still got room. You'll remember that Dan's safety team, it's a new group. They recently, for Safety Month, wanted to do a FOD contest. We got some pretty interesting submissions for what was found out on the airfields. So lots of fun pictures, but the winner of that was Centennial Airport. And this is one that I had never seen, and I could pass this around. I should have given it to you earlier, but it's a 12-foot diameter hay feeder that was blown onto the airfield after a storm, or during a storm, and then they found it right after when they were doing their inspection. So impressive. I've never actually found anything that big in one piece at the airport.
So they get it back to its owner.
I don't know. I bet Mike could tell us though.
This is why you should inspect your airfield, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, especially after a storm, I guess it's worthwhile. The next thing is just the fluorine-free foams, the PFAS and the AFFF. With that issue, there are now 3 fluorine-free foams that are on the qualified purchase list for the FAA. That's a good thing for us at Denver. We really were concerned that we wouldn't be able to find one that would allow us to do that transition without having to buy new fire trucks or build new firehouses. They found one, so we're moving forward with that transition in September. It'll take several months, so into 2025 before we actually finish the process, but it's a good thing for the state. I'm sure there are already other airports and fire departments that have transitioned, but it's good to have that continue on. The last thing I had was just really an update on Den and the traffic. We just recently got our numbers in for January through June. The traffic at Den was just short of 40 million passengers through the airport in that 6 months. That is 9.2% more than we had in 2023. And the reason I kind of think that's important to point out is it really just shows how the state is really, because other airports are doing similar business. But it's a lot of important activity. And for us at Denver, several years ago, Phil Washington, our CEO, started what we call Vision 100. And really what that was a focus on making sure that we as an airport are working towards getting ready for having 100 million passengers in 1 year. When that came out, we thought that we would have until probably 2035 or so before we ever had to really address that. It's coming a lot faster than we anticipated. So it's really a positive thing that we're looking forward, and there are other programs that are underway, but I won't go into those right now. But we expect by the end of 2024 to have over 80 million passengers through the airport this year. So good news, but lots of work to be done. I'll conclude my report with that.
Well, thank you, Steve. I'm glad that Steve talked about that because the growth in the performance of DIA, and what is coming directly impacts and affects our ability to do the things that we do to support airports across the state. And you're going to hear more about that today as we go through the agenda. So really important points. So thanks. As long as Steve can keep the trains running like that. Hey, Ken, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 33 Victor, Walden, Jackson County. We had our annual Airport Association meeting just last weekend, working with Armstrong and Associates on looking ahead to the 2025 runway resurfacing project. Sure appreciate the CAB and staff support of all that. We're continuing to look at the best options for local match and did get BLM approval to use gravel from BLM pits as part of the project. So that's good news, and we're exploring other options there too. The wildfires this summer are a poignant reminder of how vitally important airports are for public safety. Hopefully the worst of the wildfire season is behind us, but obviously those challenges can pop up anytime, especially with the weather we're having. And speaking of public safety, I might add that in Jackson County, in North Park, virtually every single major medical incident is an airlift out of the county. So again, just crucially important to our small community and many small communities like it across the state. And that's it for my report.
Thank you, Ken. A little bit later in the agenda, we're going to hear about the division's participation at Oshkosh, and not to steal any of Sean's thunder, but I do want to make a mention of a couple things. So I spent 9 days at Oshkosh this year. It was a record year, 686,000 attendees over the 10-day period, which is tremendous. EAA has done a lot of work in how people move around the grounds and in and out, and it was reflected in successful given the amount of traffic that we did have. More than 15,000 campsites, and that includes underneath the airplane. So 40,000 people camped this year, so which was tremendous. When you look at the traffic, and of course, every year we talk about more than 10,000 airplanes. The grounds have expanded, so the ability to accept airplanes into Whitman has improved. But if you look at the surrounding areas, there were more than 17,000 or almost 17,000 aircraft operations, which is 113 aircraft actions an hour. So pretty significant. Interesting, this year 6,000 volunteers, so up. But people are coming earlier and staying longer. And so the theme of AirVenture this year was inspiring the future of aviation. And one of the places that was really evident is down University Row. There's an area that continues to grow, and the presence of not just universities demonstrating and showing off their programs, but the airlines and other companies that were there to recruit was significant. Once a year, this year, Boeing brought 30 HR folks to talk to people. So Workforce development is a big issue, and getting people involved in and early in aviation continues to be a focus, and we're seeing some traction around there. The last thing is since we're in the midst of, again, here later in the agenda, we'll talk about the environmental impact report that the state is producing, that the division is producing. But for Oshkosh directly, in the 5 counties that surround Oshkosh, those 10 days generate $170 million of direct economic benefit. So it's significant, and of course it's when EAA missed the 1 year because of COVID. I think the community didn't really realize how significant that was financially when all of a sudden 600,000 people didn't show up. So very, very important. But it was a great event. And again, Sean, I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit. The division representation, Colorado's representation that Sean's going to talk about with Hetty and Kip and Sean was absolutely spectacular. And every time I walked past that booth, you couldn't get in because there's so many people. So, again, I'm stealing a little your thunder, but the support, but the work that you guys did was just off the Richter scale. And you'll hear more of that story, I think, as we go. So that's my report. Dave, why don't we move on to director report?
Thanks, Mr. Vice Chair. Just a couple of things. Last Friday, Sean and I had the opportunity to participate again in the Metro State University's new aviation student orientation event that they hold down on campus. It was 250 incoming freshmen. It's the largest incoming aviation class in the university's 54-year history. So it's pretty remarkable to see all these bright, shiny faces down there that are going to replace all of us at some point in time. So great event. We had a good time down there. We'll talk a little bit about it during Bill's remote tower, digital tower update, but on September 3rd, Senator Hickenlooper and his team will be at Northern Colorado Regional Airport for a tour to talk not just about what we're doing with remote tower and digital tower and how that's still working through the process, but also to see their beautiful new terminal building that will be open next month. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it is a really, really nice. Finishes are probably one of the nicest I've ever seen in a commercial terminal building. So very cool up there. We'll talk a little bit later in the agenda about House Bill 24-1235 and unleaded avgas and some of those things. But the things that we're doing here in Colorado with that and with NREL Scott Carey and his team with alternatively powered aircraft is getting a lot of attention around the country. So a couple of weeks ago, I was in Seattle where I was invited to join a panel on the transition to unleaded avgas at the AAAE General Aviation Conference. Jeff was up there for that, I know. Sat on a panel with folks from FAA, from World Fuel, from AvFuel. And AvFuel is a fuel distributor that provides fuel to, I think, about 75% of the airports in Colorado that sell aviation fuel. So that was a great opportunity. Going to talk a little bit more about it here next month. Our annual National Association of State Aviation Officials Conference is in Pittsburgh, September 7th through the 11th. So a few of us from the team will be out there for that like we are every year. And then get back from that and then head right up to Saratoga, Wyoming, where the Wyoming Airports Coalition invited us to come up and speak about what's going on down here with unleaded avgas. So we'll be up there in Saratoga, and then got another invite in early October to go up to the Northwest chapter of AAA's annual conference in Boise to talk about unleaded avgas and the things we're doing with NREL and alternatively powered aircraft. So things we're doing in Colorado are getting a lot of attention, and as always, we appreciate your support and letting us go do that. So that's all I have for my director's report that we haven't covered already somewhere else on the agenda.
Great. Thanks. All right. Nice. We're up for financial report.
All right.
I know you will have pictures.
Always got pictures. So looking at, these numbers are looking at our end of the fiscal year 2024. So we're kind of doing a recap here of that year. For the year, total revenue was about $54.8 million. That was down 9.2% from 60.8 in FY23. Came in about $2.2 million less than we had forecast. And as we talked about yesterday a little bit, revenue numbers are lagging slightly behind the volume numbers at Denver, although we don't anticipate that to keep up, especially with the volume coming out of Denver that we'll talk about later.
The 54.8 million that we had for revenue in FY24 is the second largest in the division's history after FY23. So it's down, yes, but historically it's still at a level we've never been at before from a revenue standpoint. So overall, good news on the revenue side. And then just for context, our FY25 budget is set at 56 million as well. Our cash balance is the next slide. We finished June in the fiscal year at 28.6 million in the cash balance. That was a 590,000 increase from May's ending amount, and a decrease over the fiscal year of 656,000. So we were relatively flat cash from start of the year to the end of the year. You can see that was pretty stable there. Of note, of course, in April 2024, we did transfer out 2.5 million to the SIB account. So artificially low as we're looking at the end there because we did pull some money out of that. But again, our cash balance remains exceptionally healthy as we continue to grow the grants that are out on the street here. And we'll talk about that in a bit here. It's us utilizing that cash balance. We aren't sitting on any funds that we don't have committed or immediate plans for. So we're in good shape as far as the cash balance goes. Next up, we look at our tax expenditures by month. As you can see, in June, we had about 2.7 million in expenditures, 2.6 of which were sales tax, 110,000 was the excise on the Avjet, and 11,000 of excise on Avgas. Those did follow our normal procedures, normal flow as expected. As always, and what you'll usually see is that big spike in February, and that's when we catch up all of the excise tax at Denver because of the up and down nature of the way things get reported there. It doesn't make sense for us to cut them a check one month and then ask them to cut us a chunk amount back the next month. We do it at the end of the calendar year, and that's why February is the only one that's usually out of cycle. On our next slide. This looks at our contingency analysis as we. Oh, I didn't go too far.
It's just,
Okay. So this just looks at our contingency analysis as we look at our cash on hand versus our grant program versus what we have for planned ahead for future years cash balance. This again was at the end of 2024. We're now into FY25. But as you can see, with our cash balance on hand, we have the cash on hand to meet all of our current commitments out there. This slide will start looking differently next month as 2024 drops off and 2026 gets added on. Next slide is our look at our admin expenses. FY24, the mandated 5% cap of FY23 revenue was $3 million. The budget that CAB approved for the year for us was $825,000. And as you can see, we wrapped up the year at about $697,000 in admin costs, which was 1.1% of FY23 revenue, well below the 5% statutory cap, total balance as well. So we are lean and mean as it comes to our admin as you compare us to other state agencies. So the money coming in is typically going out the door to airports and aviation throughout the state.
I gotta say, in the other organizations that I've been involved with along, it's rare to see the administrative side come in under budget. So good financial management, Dave. You guys are.
Okay, our fuel flow slide as we look at the fuel flow at Denver International Airport. Flowage in June was 49 million gallons, which was the highest June on record, and a new all-time high record for fuel flow at Denver. I will say that did not last long because the July numbers, they had come in, we had forecasted, where was it at here? Doesn't even say. July came in at like 53 million in flow, so it smashed the next record on there, and that's that big peak that you can see up there. We did have the July and August showing on this slide just to keep showing that these are remaining strong. So fuel flow at Denver for the year set a new record. It was, I lost my spot. 531.5 million gallons in FY24 in fuel flow. That was a 10.8% increase on FY23 flowage, and an all-time high for Denver, setting the previous high 485 million. So about almost a 10% increase over the previous high. The planes are in the air, which you just have to step outside and you can see that there, and it's certainly reflected in all of the numbers. And our final slide just looks at our cash balance allocation. We mentioned earlier, yeah, we got a big cash balance, ended the year at 28.7 million. But as you can see, when you're looking at FY25 numbers, of that cash balance, building remaining for, there's about 900,000 between the building and admin for the upcoming fiscal year. About 4 million in SWI spent. That does include the education program, which is why that's higher than the normal number that you see. CDAG spend that we're projecting this fiscal year is about 15 million. That's spend, not what's out, and then that'll leave us with a remaining balance of about 10 million. That number does not show the FY25 number or 2025 number that we're going to be asking you to approve here. So again, the cash balance that we have on hand right now, we're short about $1 million on all the total commitments toward the end of this fiscal year. So remaining remarkably healthy. Happy to answer any questions or concerns from the board on any of those or any fiscally related matters that I did not cover.
Any from the board? So I think you can move on.
All right, I'll keep going then. So item 7.2 on the agenda is the grant funding approval. That's us recommending a $19 million CDAG program for 2025. Again, that's being set based on the aviation level within the state, our current revenue forecast, our current cash balance on hand, as we kind of talked about yesterday. Just some additional context on the Denver fuel flowage. About 78% of our revenue in the division is sales tax at Denver. Now, they've gone way up. That percentage has stayed the same. So as much busier as Denver is, the rest of the state's equally as busy. And it's remarkably consistent, that percentage. So we're pretty confident with the numbers that Denver's putting out that expanding from the originally planned $60 million program to $19 million, we're fiscally able to handle that without a lot of topic, as we talked about a lot yesterday at the workshop. So I'm happy to answer any questions about why we're coming up with this number, but we are officially looking for the board to approve the planned 2025 CDAG program at $19 million.
And Mr. Vice Chair, just as a quick add-on, that also would include allocating $1.5 billion for unleaded aviation fuel transition projects per House Bill 1235. Okay, would be included in that.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board? I would look for a motion to approve the 2025 CDAG grant funding increase from 16 million to 19 million with 1.5 million for unleaded.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. You can.
Item 7.3.
All right, good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. So today's administrative grant update will not require any action by the board, as you had previously approved the supplemental grant and intern grant programs at a date prior to today. So today, I'm going to report on 5 grant amendments and 1 new intern grant. The first one is for the Grand Junction Regional Airport. We have administratively approved an increase of $33,185 to cover an additional match in bill funds from the feds for their ongoing passenger terminal overhaul project. The next one is for the Greeley-Weld County Airport in regards to their general aviation ramp rehabilitation project. They had requested and we had approved an additional $158,139 to cover a shortfall in completing some critical safety upgrades in their ongoing extensive GA ramp rehab project. The next one is Southeast Colorado Regional Airport down in Lamar for their taxiway Alpha Construction Phase 3 project. We have approved $19,580 in additional funds to cover a shortfall for that Phase 3 portion of their taxiway Alpha project. Next is Lake County Airport up in Leadville, and this is for a new taxi lane construction project. They have asked for, and we have approved $16,550 in additional funds to help match additional federal funding that came in to compensate for a matching fund shortfall. Next is Steamboat Springs Bob Adams Field for a self-service fuel station and fuel truck parking project. They had requested an additional $91,901 that we had approved to complete budgetary shortfall for that, or to compensate for a budgetary shortfall on that project. And finally is an internship grant for Gunnison Crescent Butte Regional Airport for the amount of $16,052 to cover one candidate for an internship that will last up to 1 year. We are providing 50% match on a $20.58 per hour wage. And that is my report. Any questions?
Do they have somebody identified for that yet, or is it they're waiting for approval before they?
Well, we have, I don't know. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I've worked with Gunnison, so they're in the process still, but I will say, of note, this is like the first time they've started an internship.
Okay, so
they're just getting the.
they need a little hand. Okay, great.
It's really cool to see another airport taking advantage of that hasn't done so before. That's great. So
Yes.
for making that happen.
Absolutely. It's a great airport. Any questions for Kip? Comments? All right, then we'll move on to 7.4. Back to you guys.
All right, so this is a supplemental budget request that we're asking for our EAA, Oshkosh Cost Center. Weird timing, first meeting of the year to be asking for additional funding for a cost center, but due to the close proximity of the actual event to the state's fiscal year end and start, we've continually ran into a few budget issues, having to move stuff around to be able to pay for things in the early fiscal year. Like I said, we're in FY25. Oshkosh has already happened. We still have costs associated with the next one as far as booths, hotel, booking travel, all that sort of fun stuff. So this is purely a timing-based budget request for Oshkosh to make sure that we are able to get things booked early enough. When we come to you guys in January with our FY26 budget plan, which is where the next actual event falls in, we'll have a more detailed breakdown of this is the actual cost that the event is going to be moving forward. We talked about it briefly. I know we're going to talk about it again here about the success there and the future plans of the division that the CAB has instructed and supported us to do. So this purely is just a budgetary request to make sure that we can get that stuff approved, locked up, and then we will come to you in January with, and this is what it's actually going to cost us, but this allows us to get the stuff booked and not run into the fiscal issues that we have just purely based on the timing of the event, which we kind of now know what to expect and will be able to stay ahead of it. So I am looking for the board's approval to add an additional $10,000 to the EAA Air Venture Cost Center, and I'm happy to answer any questions as it pertains to the request.
Questions, comments? I look for a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion, a second, to increase the EAA Oshkosh budget by $10,000. Before I call for a vote, because I sit on the EAA board and some of this money will be spent directly with EAA to avoid conflict of interest, I'm going to abstain from voting. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes unanimously with one abstention. Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. One guy to keep this motion. We're on to Programs Procedure Manual Update, and that's you, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So this is our annual update to our procedures manual. Unlike some previous updates, this one was a little more significant in nature due to the recent passage of House Bill 1235. So the bulk of our updates surrounds the updates of, or including the provisions of that recently passed legislation into the procedures manual. Just highlight generally the eligibility section of our CDAG program now includes language that mentions certain airports that are required to provide certain extra information or steps in order to receive CDAG funding in the future. That's all outlined in the manual now. Also, we're proposing to update the crack fill reimbursement rates rather than using statewide price agreements, which no longer exist. We just would like to internally set a cap on the amount per pound of material that's eligible for reimbursement and also the shipping rates. So that's also reflected in the update. And then we also added the new airport operations monitoring system program, which we're still working to implement, but we have a framework to do so. And currently we're looking at helping airports, reimbursing airports 90% up to $3,000 per year to acquire that through a vendor, through their own procurement. So we also included information about the new program, the $1.5 million set aside for unleaded aviation infrastructure and upgrades at airports, and also identified the incentive to provide more matching funds for unleaded fuel development versus other types of fuel development. That is the bulk of the policy changes, obviously routine updates as well, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the new version 2024-8.
Okay, questions or comments?
Good job. Excellent.
I will say for the audience that the board had an opportunity in yesterday's strategic planning session to go into detail with Scott about these changes. So this is not new news to us. All right, look for a motion.
Motion to approve the updates to the programs and procedures manual.
And sir, sorry, I forgot the other thing I had to note here. I also, as of yesterday, updated the worst case scenario formula in the financial section, which basically required changing a 0 to a 5, reflecting that the lowest forecast rate of the price of oil we would use is $45 a barrel.
Okay, I'll read.
Sorry.
So a motion to approve the procedures and, programs and procedures manual that's updated.
Second. And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. You're good. Thank you. Appreciate it, Scott. All right. Industry update. Scott Bremer.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, last month I had the opportunity to meet Scott and his team from Cosmic Aerospace, based right down the street in Centennial, and they're working on kind of a cool new alternatively powered aircraft that I thought with Scott Carey from NREL here was a great opportunity for them to come and talk to you about what they're looking at right here in Colorado. So, Scott Brenner.
It's great to have you, Scott. Thank you.
Hi, I've met a few of you guys, I think, because I got to go to the Vail conference for the airport operators and spent some time with David and introduced him to, really it's not my team, it's his team. He's the co-founder and CEO, and I got lucky enough to run into him last year. I get really passionate and go talk a long time about this company and the plane that he's designing, but I'm going to turn it over to him to run through these slides, and maybe I'll jump in if we have enough time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Would you like me to stand up, or is it?
Whatever you're most comfortable. The only thing is just project for the people that are on Zoom, so that's all.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll stand. Maybe it'll be easier. So great to meet you all. Thank you very much for the invitation today. So I'm Christopher Shaheen. I'm the founder and CEO of Cosmic Aerospace. As Scott just mentioned, we're based out of Centennial, Colorado. So we're a venture capital backed startup company building a novel all-electric passenger aircraft. So as you all know, we urgently need to decarbonize aviation. It's a big challenge for us all. And we believe electric aircraft are pretty much the best technology that we have to to meet that challenge. The first reason for that is because electric aircraft have zero emissions. That's pretty clear. The second reason for that, and that's almost more important than that, is that electric aircraft can be built to have better operating economics than today's aircraft. We cannot assume that we would build a new aircraft and we would, give it to the operators and they would want to operate it if it costs 2 or 3 times as much as operating a conventional aircraft. So that's really where we started to look at the problem space. And you all know batteries are pretty heavy. So if we would just retrofit existing aircraft with those batteries, we would end up with very short flight ranges. And we're talking about maybe 100 miles maximum. And that's not going to solve the problem. Right? So what we started to look at the very beginning was, what if we sort of rephrase the question, and if we try to, instead of retrofitting what we have, start from a clean sheet. So look at the technologies that are out there in terms of motors, batteries, power electronics, composite materials, aircraft design, all of those things, and try to build the best aircraft that we can to actually address the problem. And is there something that we can do there? And we figured out there's actually something that we can do, and we could do better than what some of the companies that are out there are trying to do. And so the aircraft that you can see here on the slide, that's the aircraft that we're building. We're calling it Skylark. It's let me see if that works here.
Is it working?
Where's the receiver?
It's sitting right here.
Okay, good, thank you. So Skylark is an all-electric aircraft, so fully battery electric, zero emissions. It's going to have significant reductions in noise because, I won't go into detail why that is. But one of the key points that I've just mentioned is that it's going to have about a 20 to 80% reduction in direct operating cost per seat mile. It's going to be a 24-passenger aircraft, so it's targeted towards the regional aviation market initially, which has several reasons. One of those reasons is infrastructure. So as you might imagine, this aircraft is going to have a very big battery, and we need to charge it in an acceptable turnaround time. So we're currently targeting about 45 minutes for a full charge turnaround. At the time this aircraft enters service, which is currently targeted for 2029. I've mentioned range. So this is really one of the key targets that we're trying to solve in the design here. And this aircraft is really the first that enables a usable range for airlines with a battery electric configuration. And we're using batteries that are essentially available today. They are starting to go into production, so they're not on very high volume production yet, but they do exist. And the way we're doing this, so the target range is 600 miles, which, if you look at the statistics, covers about 50% of all flights worldwide. And that is at entry into service. So the way we're doing this is by, as I said earlier, redesigning the aircraft. And if you look at this picture, you might see that the proportions are a little bit different than what you're used to. So we have a very long wingspan that looks a little bit more like a glider. So gliders are ultra efficient, but they also are very slow, and they carry only one, a pilot or maybe a pilot and a passenger. So the challenge was, okay, how do we build something that is, very highly energy efficient, basically a glider, but can also fly fast and can carry a substantial amount of passengers. And so that is basically what we've done with this design here. So it's going to be fast, 300 plus knots cruise speed initially, and we're aiming to enter service in 2029, as I've just mentioned.
Christopher, will the aircraft be pressurized?
Yes, it'll be pressurized. Actually, also, well, I'll get to the propulsion system in a second, so maybe I'll...
Didn't mean
No worries, no worries. All right.
Here, I'll just click it through.
Thank you very much.
I was just about to take a picture. Can you go back? May I take a picture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Scott, you're in it. Thanks.
You go back to that first picture, also notice the engines are embedded in the wing, if anybody didn't see that yet.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so I've actually already mentioned that. So Skylark is the first aircraft that'll be 100% electric and capable of flying ranges that are actually reasonable and usable for airlines. So yeah, the competition, if you retrofit, you get to maybe 250 miles. That is very, very generous even still. So yeah, I think we can skip the next slide. All right, there's a lot of text here, but we don't need to go into all of the details. Basically, as I've mentioned earlier, the key question, or the original question that we had was, how far can we go if we have an existing aircraft and we want to make that all electric? And we figured out that was the wrong question to ask. So we said, okay, actually, maybe we should ask, what does an aircraft look like if we want to go long range with existing batteries? And so that is sort of how we rephrased that and then went into the design process based on that new premise. And the answer is this aircraft. And as Scott just mentioned, you can actually see in this perspective much better how the wing configuration looks like. So we are.
What's that wingspan?
That's 118 feet. So it's a 737 wingspan, which is substantial for the size of the aircraft, for the passenger capacity. But that is essentially how we're getting to those very high aerodynamic efficiencies, structural efficiencies that we need. So you see here that the one thing that's immediately obvious is where are the engines? Well, they're in the wings, where we're embedding the engines, and it's 32 electric propulsion systems in total in the wings. So those are high-speed capable engines. It's basically the same as today's large turbofan engines. The only difference is that instead of having a gas turbine in the middle, it's a high power density electric motor that's driving the fan. And if you look at electric motor designs, actually there is a trade-off which is very different from gas turbines, which is if you scale them down, you can actually make them more efficient. And it's also much easier to cool them. So this is one of the things that we're leveraging in this design, is instead of having two large engines hanging from the wings, where we're embedding them in the wings. And that actually is a key enabler for how we're making these wings so long and still lightweight. So it's sort of propulsion leads to great structures, leads to great aerodynamics. It's a good virtuous circle here. So yeah, so I've just mentioned the engines. We've designed, built, and tested a full-scale engine prototype. So that's what you see in this slide here. This is actually the world's first all-electric jet engine that has a similar performance as a gas turbine of the same size. So this engine has a similar thrust-to-weight ratio, which is very significant because the reason we're using gas turbines on engines is because they're very power dense. They have a lot of power for the volume and the weight that they have. And doing this with electric motors is very, very hard. And so we've leveraged sort of the advances in electric motor technology over the last 5 to 10 years to build a new type of engine. And that is basically what we've done here. So it's about 2.5 times the efficiency of a gas turbine, a much higher reliability because it basically has just one moving component compared to hundreds of thousands in a modern gas turbine, and much lower maintenance cost, lower manufacturing cost. So we've actually built this prototype in less than 6 months, which is something that you cannot expect to do for a new gas turbine. Yeah, so to the next slide. I've mentioned the operating economics, so that's one key aspect that we're working on improving. So we expect all in about a 50% lower operating cost for this aircraft compared to a conventional aircraft of the same capacity. And the main drivers, so the cost reduction drivers here are really two things. One is a lower energy cost. So you could equate that with the fuel cost that you have today. And the reason for that is primarily because the aircraft is just much more efficient. So the energy that is stored in the battery is used much more efficiently in generating thrust compared to what you'd have in conventional aircraft. So just as one data point, gas turbines about 30% efficient. That means about 30% of the energy that goes in is used as thrust, and the rest is used for heating up the engine and the environment and generating noise. So gas turbines are really just actually more efficient heaters than they are propulsion systems. So electric systems are much better. We also have lower maintenance costs. I've mentioned that earlier, simply due to the simplicity of the overall system. Fewer parts, fewer components. We think the engines actually can be maintenance free after a while of getting used to a new system, and that drives down the maintenance cost quite substantially as well. So that's how we arrive at roughly 50% of operating cost. All in. All right, and then one very important point. I mean, we're building a new aircraft, but that is not all. We cannot, and we don't assume that we build this aircraft and just push it out to the market and then assume, hey, here's the aircraft, so go operate it. So we make it a priority to connect with key infrastructure stakeholders in the industry. That means airports. So we would love to have a conversation with with you all, but also with airlines and utility providers and all the other key stakeholders that are involved in enabling a transition of flight towards sustainable and accessible and affordable flight in the future. So we are currently we're in the process of building up that network. We call it the Cosmic Network tentatively. We're 5 airports under MOU at the moment, and we're continuing to build out that network. So our main target is really, I mean, we have a few points on the slide here, working on charging infrastructure and procedures, working on ground operations, maintenance and repair, safety, pilot training. I won't go through this here, but it's basically just having a good conversation on, how can we be helpful to make sure that this becomes reality, that everybody is ready once this aircraft receives its type certification, and that we're all working together in enabling this future. So I think that is probably the last slide, if I remember correctly. So
being Colorado headquartered, Denver Centennial area, we hope that remains home, and we got to meet David. We've met people throughout the state, and we just love the idea of collaborating with a great state that's big into aviation, big into aerospace. We think there's a lot we can do together. Dave told us about the study with InRail. We think we can all be helpful and collaborative and work together. And even we always talk about 2029, 2030 because we think we can be in service, but it also gives, we think 5 years is enough to kind of overcome the things we have to overcome or get ready for in 5 years. Not 1 year, not 2 years, but we think 5 years is enough. And we'll do as much of the heavy lifting as we can.
I gotta say, of all the new aircraft designs I've seen late, that's gotta be the prettiest one I think I've seen. Absolutely, it's pretty cool.
I guess I would say one more thing, if it wasn't completely apparent, the way I talk about it is I got to meet them, and you run into the other companies. We're gonna do hybrid, we're gonna do hydrogen, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do an electric airplane that's this size. My background was actually almost 15 years as an investment banker, and I covered airlines, so I know a lot about how the airline guys think and the investors think. And I said, well, just to say, as he said, just to say you're going to be no emissions is not going to get an order from an airline where a CEO needs to have earnings per share and a private owner needs to have profit. But because of the dynamics of this aircraft and leading to much lower operating costs, I think I can walk into an airline for sure and say, this will provide an avenue towards growth in revenue and growth in profits. Then their ears perk up a little more. If you can really do that, then I'm listening.
So one of the questions, that just popped up from Brody Ayers at Denver International Airport was, what's the megawatt charging demand for that airport?
Yeah, that's a great question. So We are currently targeting 3.5 megawatts on average. That would be for the target 45-minute turnaround.
Size of charger, that's megawatt hours to load is, I assume? You're trying to get 3.5 megawatts on the aircraft?
Yeah, 3.5 megawatts.
At what rate? Thought through that yet? That's fine if you haven't.
Sorry, what do you mean with rate?
What, so like
Well, we think it'll take 45 minutes. I don't know.
So
Okay.
megawatt is, yeah, so 3.5 megawatts, that's the power input. And if
In
we do
45 minutes.
that would get us
Okay.
to the 45-minute turnaround.
Thank you.
When are you gonna have your concept to begin testing? What's your goal?
You mean on a roadmap, basically?
Prototypes and
So we,
Prototype for this,
absolutely.
the actual physical structure.
Yeah, we are working on, so our roadmap is to, this configuration has never been done before. Right? So we're working on building hardware prototypes very quickly. We're actually going to fly a relatively large unmanned demonstrator this year.
Okay.
And we're aiming to build a full-scale demonstrator by 2026. So that'll be not a full-scale fuselage, but a full-scale wing section with a full-scale engine embedded, or several of them.
And you think by 29 you'll be able to do production and sell and have?
It's a very aggressive timeline. Yes, I mean this is a Part 25. Yeah,
Part 25. Okay.
So
and that's what makes the timeline a little bit challenging.
Exactly, it is.
You really have to work closely with the FAA.
Yes, exactly.
But we're by no means like an eVTOL. I mean, that was creating a whole new sector, We will qualify under this part,
Part 25. But having that relationship with them really needs to be.
So that's starting essentially.
Exactly.
That's the long pole in the tent.
And we are, we've made it a priority to be in contact with the regulators from day one. So, we have their eyes on the design and are, continuing that to ramp that up.
As most of us are pilots, we'd love to see the flight deck.
Sure.
Do you think you'll certify that single pilot? 'Cause I don't know Part 25 if you're able to certify single pilot.
It'll need to be 2 pilots initially. We don't know where, might be that it will become 1 pilot at some point, but.
So I know we have a million questions, at least I have a million questions, but for the sake of time, I think we'll find a different venue to be able to ask those questions, but thank you for your comments, Scott, about Colorado. We are a leading aerospace state. There's a lot of people to lean over their skis here, so this is a good place to be doing something of that significance. And this board is very, very interested, obviously, in this kind of technology and where it is. And we work very closely with NRAL here, so with Scott. So this is important to us.
This is cool.
This is very cool. It's very neat. And Dave's right. That's the cleanest looking airframe that I think we've seen in this kind of space. So.
Isn't it Bob Hoover that said if it looks pretty, it probably flies pretty?
We might have to steal that.
And Sean needs to get up in an aircraft and get that background changed to a mountain.
Right.
It's like somewhere in Europe.
We do have some with Vermont background. So.
But Scott, Christopher, thank you.
Thanks very much for the invite.
It's great to see. Okay. So we're going to move on to program updates. And Hetty, you get to start.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. I'm getting close to getting all of the 2024 Aviation Education and Workforce Development Grants contracted. It's going really well this year, and CDOT vendor management has been on the ball, which is usually my biggest hurdle in getting all of those contracted. And this year it's been great, as we have 10 out of the 14 grants are all new vendors. So that's quite a bit. And as you know, aviation is well and alive, as seen by all of the events around not just the state of Colorado, but the country, where we've had record attendance pretty much across the board. Just to kind of have a comparison, in 2022, I think I attended about 12 events for the entire year. And this year, since the last CAB meeting in early June, I have attended that many events in just a short couple of months. So it's been very busy. And as you know, just if you look at some of the pictures, some of the events, we have in the upper left is Granby fly-in, which was great. Lots of aircraft out there. And then of course Oshkosh, which was fantastic. And then Pikes Peak Regional Air Show, which was this past weekend. That was a pretty incredible experience. So we were there I was there for about 3 days, had to pick up a guy who dropped off a plane, and then set up our tent. But I had the unique opportunity to meet a couple of the Blue Angels. I would like to point out the fact that I got to meet and talk with Lieutenant Commander Amanda Lee, who is the first female Blue Angels pilot. So that was a pretty incredible experience. Over the course of 2 days, I passed out probably close to 275 charts and directories, which is huge considering we passed out 700 in Oshkosh. So you can imagine 30,000 people in attendance. So it was quite an experience. And in the lower left-hand picture, I would like to point out the kid in the pumpkin orange shirt. He was a mentor way back when I was with Wings Over the Rockies. Met him when he was 15 years old, and he is now flying the B-29, Fifi, which is actually in Colorado as we speak. The CAF has their air power tour going on right now. They're up at BJC through this weekend, and then next week they'll be going to Colorado Springs. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, which is pretty cool. Trimby mentioned that Ames Aviation Day is on September 14th, but there is also the Longmont Air Show and Expo, as well as the U.S. Aircraft Expo, also on that same day. So not only are there lots of events going on, but they're starting to kind of stack up on weekends. It would be nice if they could spread that out a little bit. Yeah, so that's a challenge too, just to kind of get that word out there and get it on calendars in enough time that other airports and organizations can see those dates and know, hey, maybe we should push it out to another day or maybe a different day on the weekend, that sort of thing. Steamboat Springs actually did that. So their Airport Appreciation Day is on Sunday, September 22nd. So, and then there's also Girls in Aviation Day, which is on September 21st up at Shelter, BJC. So yeah, that's pretty much my report.
Hey, can I jump in?
Yes.
I just wanted to show this photo because it's pretty cool. That bottom center photo there is taken from the Oshkosh Tower. So you'll see me on the left. Amanda, I don't know her last name. Amanda Pippett. And then Kip, and then Hetty. And all of those people there are Metro State grads from the aviation program. Amanda was selected to be a controller up in the tower during the show. Me and Hetty actually graduated same class in 2000, and those two graduated same class in whatever year that was. So
yeah, 2016. Amanda and I shared a couple of classes, and she was actually vital to me passing my aviation physics class, along with a couple other people who had to tutor me in different areas of math. But Amanda found out that I was going to join these folks at the air show, and she reached out to me and offered to take us up up to the tower for a tour. So she had only been an actual controller. I think she's only been a controller for 4 years now because we graduated together in 2016. And so this is her second run at being a controller for Oshkosh. So this is pretty awesome that she was selected 2 years in a row for that.
Yeah, just a really cool example of the success that comes out of Metro, and all the people that you meet and see when you're at the show is pretty amazing. So I just want to point that out.
Oh, also the top middle picture is taken from Perfect Landing Restaurant, which is now open.
Great. Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah.
Scott, you're going to talk about where we are in the economic impact study.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So we are just making our way up to about halfway through the project timeline. We've completed all the data collection efforts over the past 6 months for all the 66 airports included in the study. Right now, the Kimley Horn team is working on modeling those data inputs, and we look forward here in the short near future to receive some draft outputs and documents in that regard. But until then, we're kind of playing a waiting game for the data to come to us, but we still remain on track to have data available for the airports at the next CAOA conference in January, with final deliverables a couple months afterwards. I will, if Sean's gonna let me share my screen, I do have something to share, one product that we now have available. There we go. So one of the deliverables we have built into the scope of this project is these animated flight maps, and we've had, what is this?
It's going.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Sorry, yeah. All right, so we created, we had the Kimley Horn team create about 30 of these for airports we identified. And it's a pretty cool animation that it's got a time lapse. This is 2023, all the departures, and it kind of shows you where all the flights come from and depart to.
Yeah, it's going now.
There we go. And so these are available on our project website right now, coloradoaviationsystem.com, under the 2025 project draft deliverables. And just for the board's appreciation, we do have one for Denver Telluride and Kit Carson. That wasn't, they were actually regionally decided as well. And you guys all have very regional accessible airports.
I think what's amazing is not just the aircraft, but if you watch the numbers at the top as they evolve through the year, it's just remarkable to see, how impressive those are at a place like Denver.
If you want one that's easier to follow, try Walden.
And yes, Mike, Central is one of the 30 that we've produced this for. So we didn't do that for many of our smaller airports. I don't think Walden's on the list, Kent. I'm sorry, but
Sorry, Jeff.
It's pretty remarkable, and there's slower versions of this as well that are needed. And you can see what's really cool is as the year goes by, you can see the city dots get bigger as they have more flights to and from that particular place. So it's a really cool visual depiction of where most of the flights are coming from, which is going to be. And the states do, the darker there.
You know, and as I've said many times yesterday, including, and I'll do it again today, the timing of the updated economic impact report it couldn't be more important. So we need it on time, but it could be an important tool to work with the public and with our legislatures on the impact of aviation within Colorado. So.
And Scott's doing a fantastic job of managing. He's our project manager for this. He was also the project manager back in 2020 when we did this as well. So it's good to have somebody that knows what they're doing. And same thing, we had Kimley Horn did our last one in 2020. They were reselected this year to do it. And so they're really familiar with what we're doing. So thanks, Scott, you're doing a great job on this. We know airports are always excited.
And that's just one of the many cool features we've added to this huge project. We have some other special tools that will be providing the airports to help tell their story as well. But those are yet to come, and look forward to sharing them when we're available.
All right. Thank you. Next we get to hear Scott Carey about NRAS.
Yeah, just let me know.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Let me go.
So I will just put a disclaimer, I do not have pretty pictures today. We went true geek on you today. So I wanted to give you an update. So we've been going through the alternative power study, and things are moving along very well. So the majority of our modeling and analysis tasks are complete. And right now is put it into documents. In the past few months, reached out to the participant airports and said, hey, here's what it looks like is happening at your airport. Is this accurate? This is what this could mean, to get feedback. And so that's been, if feedback was given, we're including that into the work as we move forward. So if you can move to the next one, Sean. So now let's start to give you some of our geeky things. Biggest number here, if you go into the middle column, highest at present value. Where can you make money? And in this case, we're gonna go through 3 different slides of looking at putting on-site generation and storage in, and whether it makes sense to put just generation or generation and storage. And it's really dependent on your utility and the rates that they wish to charge. If you look, in this case, compare Albuquerque to BJC and Denton in this case. And this is just a little bit of passenger service going in. Excel has a rate that says, hey, effectively saying, we'll take care of, we're not gonna worry about storage too much in our rates. Effectively saying, we will give you an electric vehicle rate that doesn't disincentivize you in certain parts of the day. Whereas in Albuquerque, you have battery storage, but the cost of the power is extremely inexpensive. So you see PV, KWDC, you see BESS. PV is generation, solar. BESS is a big battery parked on the site. And so when you go to Albuquerque, the way that their rate structure is set up, it makes sense for you to have a big reservoir to store energy, and you don't necessarily have to have any generation to get the best rate and make the most off of your system. You go to come up here to Colorado on the Front Range, you want to generate during the day when you can. And you don't necessarily have battery storage. The downside to this, the caveat that comes into this is one of the ancillary benefits to a lot of these discussions is that if you do not have at least some size of battery to go with your system, then if you have a regional power outage, you can't operate that cluster of facilities on their own, independent. So in the case of, if we look at the Front Range discussion, with the start of the power safety shutoff issues, how that is developing, we've seen that come from other states. Right. There's an ancillary benefit of, hey, do I need a backup generator, or can these batteries extend my day tank so I don't have to get more deliveries? All those types of things come into play. Any questions kind of on that kind of detail?
When you talk about storage though, how much? I mean,
so that is 1,400 kilowatt hours storing 2.6 megawatts at Albuquerque. And I should be able to tell you, we size them in shipping containers in terms of the sizes. We can do shipping containers for you sometime soon. Because they essentially come pre-packaged, most of the battery storage comes pre-packaged in a shipping container with its own fire safety and climate control. So you just park them outside on pallets, ideally.
What's the life cycle, lifespan?
Yeah, they're generally about 10 years.
10 years.
And in all of our modeling and what we do in terms of net present value, we assume that the solar panels are going to last at least 20, and they're actually going longer. And then for battery storage, you're going to have to cycle through those at a 10-year cycle.
Okay.
To maintain the work there. So this looks at that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. What does the annual peak demand for the airports mean?
So annual peak demand is the highest number that is requested on a typical day.
Gotcha.
So if you open the fire hydrant, the absolute maximum amount of pressure coming out, if you think of it as a water relationship. Does that help,
Yes,
Captain?
thank you.
So when you have battery storage too, demands. And so if you have big surges, the batteries take the surges and you never sees those. That's where that starts to go. Very dependent on utility rates and coordination with the utilities and where those rates may go. Power safety shutoffs are the other piece that we have been tracking significantly. And if power safety shutoff is a wildfire risk, we're gonna proactively shut off a line because we're worried about a wildfire from winds and climate conditions. And we've started to see those in Colorado, so. Next slide. Flight schools. Okay. We were able to get some great data from some of the flight schools on actual flights and compare that, what they were actually flying per day by tail number, and turn that into some fairly accurate forecasting on how much power would be needed for running flight school operations. Roughly a 45-minute flight time is kind of where that ends up. Ideally it'd be longer, but that's around 45. BJC's flight school was, I think we looked at that as an actual 27 aircraft. And then we scaled to different locations to say, now what if it was a five aircraft? What if it was 12? To give kind of a scale to where these might be. And similar situation, now it does make sense to put in some of your own generation to get the best price long-term through the flight school operations. And you can be potentially looking at those revenues regardless of whether the flight school is operating.
Was it McCare? The flight school at BJC?
Western Air. That it was Western
Air. Let me check. We had two of them that we had some data, and one of them was like it came in extremely clean. So it was effective to use quickly.
Scott, when you said put in your own generation, do I translate that to be putting in solar?
Yeah.
Solar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now we say solar, we say generation, but right now the cheapest you can put in is solar.
Yeah.
Roughly, I think we're between 4 and 7 acres a megawatt is how much space is needed on the ground, if you're looking at ground mount. So, next slide. Now, this just says, okay, we're gonna combine these. Now, big thing you see here is for BJC, the flight school does make a difference in terms of the peak demand. But they're not drastic differences in terms of the approach or what might occur on the outside. Give you a couple quick updates of things that we are seeing. Thank you for the great intro and primer for these guys. That was awesome. That was beautiful. So a lot of things that Cosmic is working on, we're hearing from other groups in industry as well. Some items that have recently come out Dave, have you briefed them on the re-off and the alternately powered aircraft requirements?
We have talked a little bit about that. It's been a couple of months though.
Okay, so FAA has been tasked with looking at the whole of government approach to alternately powered aircraft research and how to help that industry move forward. They have a 1-year timeline they're supposed to hit as of October to put a report to Congress, and it might be quicker than that. So they've started their work on putting the right teams together and what are those different methods and how do we support that currently. In addition, Department of Energy has a requirement to look at hydrogen in aviation and what would a national strategy for hydrogen. Similar to what just came out in terms of the national strategy for ground vehicle charging. It's a similar type of mandate out of the legislation that just came out. So we're starting to see some of that happening. So those are just a couple things.
And one of the things we'll share with you, one of the first deliverables that they were tasked with was sort of a state of the industry technology and different manufacturers and aircraft. It's been really dynamic. That was done just a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
One of the big hydrogen aircraft developers has since gone out of business. And so we
have an aircraft available if you want one.
I know, it's a hydrogen powered Dash 8, right? Yeah. So anyway, so they're going to update that and ask them to update that with the current state. So at the end, we have one that's at least current, but of course it's going to be out of date a year later. So this is something we're definitely looking forward to continuing with NREL, whatever that next step looks like once they're done with this initial effort.
A couple things that are coming in this last phase here is, okay, now based on these energy uses, what does it mean in terms of your revenue streams? So when I hear fuel flowage keeps going up, well, you want to make it more efficient, right? And the airlines want to make it more efficient. So, and then when we look at the main lines, they're doing the same thing. They're saying they've been able to make themselves more efficient over time just with petroleum. As that efficiency keeps going up, how do you keep your revenues consistent to keep up with what you need to keep up, keep the system in place? And so some of those correlation discussions, we're going to take an initial look at kind of the analysis to say, a kilowatt of electricity versus a kilowatt of petroleum, they're going to go different distances.
It's exactly what keeps airport managers up at night.
We'll see if we can start to give you some info to go, okay, maybe this will work. Yeah.
It's interesting. The fun fact is, for us, it's more of a policy issue, because if every gas burning aircraft was converted to electric tomorrow, our division would get hit with about a $200,000 loss of revenue out of that.
Of revenue, but
revenue.
55 to 60
comes to us.
Actual,
this
is funds we have, because the rest goes back to airports.
But when we start talking about hydrogen or larger aircraft like that, it's a different story. And of course, as I was talking with Mike Fronefeld and their fuel flowage fees that they charge, and what the federal excise tax is on fuel that helps fund the FAA, how we're funded, we're going to have conversations about what the analog looks like and how do you collect the equivalent of a fuel flowage fee or tax, state or federal, on electric and hydrogen and these things. That's definitely a big part of the broader.
So that's being looked at, between FAA, NASA, and we're seeing pieces of that come through of, hey, here's our current legislation and here's how we fund this industry. Now, how does that need to shift versus react later in the system?
And so having lived this in my old world at Jefferson, going from paper to digital, where you had to completely cannibalize the business model, that's what keeps people awake at night, because it's much more expansive than this one. Hey, just one fast question on 3 or 4 presentations ago, you showed us some slides and some estimates on charging high capacity, high output charging stations and how they would be needed at an airport.
Yeah.
Has this changed that view?
No. So we think of it kind of, we start with, okay, what's the aircraft going to request, and then how do we meet that request?
Yeah.
So this is about meeting that request for power. Yeah. So that information will be coming through.
Do you need 3 stations or 5, depending on what the peak is, in traffic, and then of course it's a fluid number as traffic changes. So.
Yeah. And it also depends on the charge rates, like what you need versus what somebody else says they want, and the different standards that are out there, and also cooling. The cooling of the batteries and things that go on.
Quick question, just landing weight. I'm kind of wondering, kind of a meeting runways we're going to be taking. Is it different? Significantly?
Yeah, so, battery electric aircraft is quite a bit heavier than a conventional aircraft for the same passenger count, but we're at about 50,000 pounds. So should still be doable for,
And that fits a C3 airport, that fits your wingspan.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Can I ask a quick question as well?
Yeah, sure.
We're gonna have 1,000 more when we find you, though.
One phone call, we got to meet in person.
Absolutely. You were showing the battery energy storage system, kilowatt hours and kilowatt capabilities. They were actually different for the different systems that you were showing. So different C rates. Did you have any information on the battery chemistries, cell chemistries that were used there?
Let's have a follow-on, because we have a kind of a large model just for sizing, and then we can kind of dive from there.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Sure.
It's a fascinating time. We're fascinating place in the evolution of the industry. So thanks, guys. That's great.
Thank you.
So talk about business model changes. And one that we're trying to take the FAA through. Bill, Philippine's going to talk about where we are with digital power.
Okay, before I get going, I spoke to Robert Oldesloggers yesterday. He called me and said to say hello to everybody. He's still doing pretty good, but it's a struggle. So anyway, where we are on currently, I'm still working with Raytheon Frequentis in order to get them to come to reality as far as the cost they're proposing for a system up at FNL. Now, that's going pretty good. Right now, they've gotten their system installed at the tech center and are going through optimization at this point. Unfortunately for them, they've run slap dab into the same thing that we did. And it's probably due to the same people that are throwing roadblocks into what they're doing. They're into requirements creep again. So the FAA is being the FAA, right? And I believe that they'll be able to get through that. They've been able to integrate STARS into their automation platform. So that's looking good. I've also been talking to Sea Ridge about trying to get the system up at FNL in some kind of reasonable shape for the meeting with Senator Hickenlooper on the 3rd, when Dave and I'll be up there. But right now, what we're primarily dealing with is being able to get through system design approval so that we can make moves to replace, come down here. It would be a shame not to utilize the infrastructure we already have, right? That's there. And if you look at their system and look at what we have up at FNL, they're identical. There is no difference. They have 3 camera masts, they have a video wall. I mean, it's identical to ours. So what's happened is the FAA is now going to reinvent the wheel again. All right, so the next step is Raytheon and Frequentis team are coming here to meet with the ADO manager and his staff to talk about funding options. There are several different funding options through the feds that we'll be able to do. That's all predicated on being able to get through a system design approval. I'm alternately, feel, good about it and not feeling good based on the FAA's behavior. I will tell you, having worked with the FAA for as long as I have really never seen it as bad as it is now. These folks here with the airplane, aircraft certification is going to be so much fun. Y'all are going to love that. That is going to be something you're really going to enjoy.
Is there a price challenge with, cost challenge with Frequentis and Raytheon?
No, I mean.
Are they comparable to what Sea Ridge was, or the? I'm sure they should be a little bit.
Actually, they're better than Sea Ridge because they have understanding of the process.
Right.
Unfortunately, what they're running into is some of the same people that worked on our project up at FNL are throwing exactly the same roadblocks in front of them. So, I mean, it's deja vu all over again.
Is there any help needed there that we can provide?
Yeah, well, we're hoping that Senator Hickenlooper will be able to say something and help us with that, because the FAA is refusing to learn from what other people are doing. In Europe, this is all over Europe. I mean, they're refusing to learn lessons that other people are teaching them. It's just.
Well, the Air Force and the Navy are doing it here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but we're, the main concern I have, quite frankly, is that the FAA move a little quicker, a little faster on getting this certification done. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So I'll share with you, with the collaboration of Bill and us and the airport, we put together a set of talking points for the senator and his team around this issue. We'll tweak those over the next week or so, and also share those with all of you. I think the biggest thing that Bill and I have articulated to the senator previously and his staff was that Congress needs to hold the FAA's feet to the fire because largely FAA is at times ignored congressional intent with digital towers, notably with the 2018 reauthorization language. But a couple of the things that the new bill says not less than 6 months after the date of enactment of the new reauth bill, which was, we're already 6 weeks into that. That's right. The FAA is supposed to create a program and publish milestones for the system design approval. I don't know how they're coming on that. My guess is they're not going to make that deadline.
They're not.
And then the next step says that by the end of the year, they've got to expand the SDA, the system design approval, to not less than 3 airports at which a digital tower will be installed. And guess what? We've already got the only one left in the United States right here in Colorado. Yeah. So we'll see if they make that timeline. So the big part of our pitch to the senator will be, you all need to hold FAA's feet to the fire to do what you're telling them to do.
We're getting up to FNL is a picture's worth 1,000 words.
It is, so it'll be great.
But that'll be a little more meaningful to him when he stands behind those screens and understands what we're really talking about.
We'll share those with you.
One of the main things is that Congress does these things. They pass these bills and reauthorization, and then they go off and do other things.
Yeah.
I mean, and so they need to follow up on this. And Senator Hickenlooper is on the Commerce Committee, Aviation Subcommittee, and he's in a position to do, to bring some of this at least to their attention. But anyway.
Thank you, Bill. That was good. Okay, Sean, you want to talk about Oshkosh?
You bet. Thank you, Vice Chair, members of the board. As Vice Chair Van Tine mentioned, Colorado was represented well at EA Oshkosh this year for the 2024 EA Air Venture. But to start off, getting there was not easy, and I'm going to show you how that happened.
I'm John Erickson at EAA, and so many people fly to get here. It's all about aviation after all, whether taking their own plane or flying in on an airline. But after last week's huge technology meltdowns all over, one group couldn't take their flight, so they had to find another way. It might not surprise you that the woman wearing airplane earrings has flying on her mind. But to get to EAA, Hetty Carlson had to take a Rocky Mountain road trip.
The show must go on.
She works for the Colorado Department of Transportation, and she had a goal at EAA.
To set up a booth and talk about flying safely in the great state of Colorado, specifically in the mountains.
But after the major technology meltdown worldwide last week,
looked at our phones and it said your flight has been canceled.
So on Saturday, she and her coworker Sean Setterberg began the 15-hour drive to get here. An overnight stop in Iowa for a short rest to try to make the Sunday night deadline to get their booth set up.
It had to happen, and we were willing to do whatever it took to do that.
They made it, and it's been worth it.
We are so incredibly grateful. It has been a fantastic show.
So fans of flying here at EAA can learn what it takes to pilot a flight over the Rocky Mountains. And one more leg to their journey, they are going to drive that rental car back instead of being able to fly, so they'll enjoy all things aviation here during EAA. At EAA, John Erickson, NBC 26.
So yeah,
it was 1,000 people that you guys got picked to do that.
No kidding. So that's the power of social media right there. So I posted on our Facebook page that we got there, and one day the news crew comes up and wants to do interviews with us. So it was great, and it was a good positive story, thank God. And yeah, it was cool. So, but yeah, Mark kind of went through some of the big stats about the event. If nobody's ever been to Oshkosh, it's an incredible event, attracting this year 686,000 people, which was a new record. Over 10,000 arrivals. 861 exhibitors. We were one of those. We were in Hangar C, and there was also 5 states, including us, Minnesota, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin. We went there not really knowing what we were getting into. We'd been going to Oshkosh earlier under the Nesteo hat. This is the first time we went by ourselves, and our mission was aviation safety, getting people from around the country, around the world, to encourage them to fly to Colorado, but to do it safely and to give them the proper resources in order to do that. One of the things we promoted while we were there was Bill Standifer. He's with Colorado Pilots Association. He runs their mountain flying program here in Colorado. Does a talk every year that just stacks the room tight full of people wanting to know about mountain flying in Colorado, specifically about the weather phenomena that affects our flying here quite a bit. So it was completely successful. This was down there below. I mean, our booth was packed every minute of the show. You had to take a number to come talk. It was incredible. We gave away over 700 airport directories and 700 charts. We had to have Dave send us out more materials because we ran out, and we also had these cool foam airplanes that we strategically gave to each kids that looked like they were interested in aviation, and we gave away 200 of those. So it was an incredibly successful event, great partnership with Colorado Pilots, having those guys in the booth who talk pilots stuff and are promoting their mountain flying ground school was great to have them there. So that's what we were doing. We were promoting their ground school. Bill Standifir's talk. Our mountain weather cameras was a huge hit there. We had a touchscreen monitor there where people could thumb through the different cameras that we have. Yeah, it was quite incredibly successful. Next year, we're already planning for that. On our 15-hour drive home, we started that planning process already. So we're going to be back, and we'll be back bigger. We're going to get a bigger booth. We're hopefully going to bring more people so we can have more shifts throughout Hetty and I were literally, and Kip were at the booth all the time. Which is good. That's why we went there. But hopefully we can get more people there and have an even better impact next year. So, yeah, that'll hand it over. Hetty, Kip, you guys want to talk about anything?
As he said, we wanted to do a bigger booth next year and more people, but we also would like to kind of expand a little bit on like representing Colorado. So not just the stuff that we do or Colorado Pilots, but also the colleges and universities that offer aerospace aviation programs, and also the museums that we have, which are huge. So yeah, we kind of want to add them into the mix as well.
Yeah, and on the drawing board currently is to develop what right now what you would get is our downloadable PDF format of our airport directory, but put that into a much more easy to use, easy to navigate, accessible app that people can download and use. So we want to prop that up, and then also we're working hard. Hetty's working really hard on the passport program. So we'd also like to have some kind of program propped up then as well to promote. So all kinds of great stuff happens there. It's an amazing place to get to represent Colorado, and people are so interested in Colorado. That was the thing, is it was really easy to get people to stop. We didn't have to, convince them to stop and talk. They were just wanted to talk Colorado. It was awesome. So,
they stand in front of the booth and kind of go,
Yep.
I love Colorado.
Yeah, a lot of these Flatlander pilots, want to come fly in the mountains.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, when you look at I think we take the airport directory a little bit for granted. It's so good. But when you look at what other states produce, both in the map and in the airport directory, we blow the doors, or you guys blow the doors off of everybody. It's a very usable, high quality production that really stands out when you compare it to what other states are providing to their pilots. So it's something to be very proud of. What these guys did. And I went by the booth a dozen times to try to say hi, and they were buried. And so it really, you did an excellent job of representing the state, representing the vision, and representing the. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Mark. And I wanted you talk about the airport directory being one of the best out there, and that's not because of me. That's because of everybody that's involved with Colorado Pilots. I'm not a licensed pilot. I don't know these things, so I do artist stuff. That's Colorado Pilots has been integral into make that product what they want and what is useful to them. And so as you can see, that partnership continues and will continue to get stronger too. So, yeah.
I just want to say that I think it was also very worthwhile to have a planner, division planner to go. it was good to have somebody who is a pilot to talk with the pilots, but it's also really good to have somebody who has been on every one of those airports on the ground. So, because I did field quite a few questions from interested pilots, amenities that are on the airports, what the runways look like, this and that, all this airport information that I could point to right there. And I had some very lengthy conversations with some people who were trying to plan to get up there, so it's very worthwhile to have a planner.
That drives a thought, that a lot of the vendors that are selling and promoting their products are marketing to airports. So I wonder, with CAOA and, being part of that, maybe being part of that or being involved, but being able to, for the division to talk about how we support airports, you might get not just pilots interested in talking with you, but airport operators that come to Oshkosh to see what's going on within that family.
And Sean, when was the last time we were at Oshkosh? I know we had gone previously, but it's been a lot of years.
Yeah, so 2014 was the last year. We started that in 2004 under the hat of NASAO, National Association of State Aviation Officials. It was a great effort then, where it, under NASAO's hat, any state that had airport directories or charts could send them to our tent, and then we would get them out to the pilots there. So there was typically on any given year about between 20 and 30 states that offered their materials at their that tent. So maybe one day we can get back there, but that takes a huge part, a big lift to make that happen. So we're just going to perfect what we do best for Colorado for right now.
Well, thank you, Sean.
Thanks.
And it's great. I can tell you from having just getting ready to rotate off my term on the executive committee for NASAO, there's minimal interest from other states, mostly because of fiscal constraints.
Yeah.
Not that they don't want to participate, but I don't expect that anytime in the next few years you'll see a NASAO combined tent like used to exist. So we're going to move forward with our own circumstance and do it that way.
It's a missing opportunity, but that may, leaning over to the tips of the skis may bring.
And NASAO was there, Greg Pecoraro, our CEO, was there, so they definitely had a presence, but not like we used to. So thanks, Sean. I appreciate it.
Nice job.
You and Hetty and Nick on the track. And sorry I wasn't there. I will be next year.
Just getting there was a story, huh?
Yeah, it was awesome.
So as cool as that subject was, this next one is just as exciting too. Especially if you're an airport.
I think it's more exciting. Surplus is my favorite, one of the favorite things I get to do as an employee of the division. We usually talk about what is offered and what was sold the previous year. We've never really talked about in a public setting what kind of an impact it has for an airport on their CIP and on the state CIP. So there are currently, this year, there's 45 pieces of equipment from 3 airports, the vast majority of them from Denver. We have a few from Colorado Springs and a few from Greeley that are also on the sale. This is just one instance of how big of an impact it has. So this ARF truck is listed from Denver as for sale for $15,000. The surplus price, so if they pick it as their first pick during the surplus sale, we will pick up $12,000 of that $15,000, and the locals only pay $3,000. So for less than 1% of the replacement cost of that vehicle, they can get an ARF truck to help them at their airport. Obviously, this is way more than any NPEs would help, or a lot of airports that have commercial service with the need for an ARF truck this big. That's a huge hit to their CIP. So this is only one example. We've got a lot of multi-use equipment this year, some Oshkosh plows and brooms that are all one piece that are really exciting for a lot of the bigger mountain airports that need snow removal. This program has grown a lot over the past few years. We started with some equipment from Denver, thanks to Steve Lee and his help with CAOA. And it has evolved into a very robust, very, very successful program. Each airport has to keep everything at the airport for 2 years before they can do anything with it. And it's solely for aviation purposes for those 2 years, but it can then be used, they can sell it after that, they can replace it, they can use it elsewhere in the city or the county. It's a great resource for the airports. We have $1 million allocated this year from the board. Last year, the sale was just over $1 million. I think it was $1,006,000 or something. So as the program continues to grow, so does the support of the board. Thank you for that. so we can get this stuff sprinkled about the state like confetti. And it's definitely the gift that keeps on giving. So Denver's partnership is integral to this working as well as it does, as well as the airports realizing what kind of a wonderful asset is for them as well. So no real updates on this year's sale, but it happens next week. So at the October meeting, I will definitely have a recap where everything went and what was sold and how successful this year has been. So any questions?
No, I think yesterday we, said thank you, Steve. I mean, it's really, your involvement and engagement in getting this off the ground. Keelan used a term yesterday that I really liked, which is that there's a Robin Hood aura about this because, it's not driven by financials. It's driven by doing the right thing and keeping it in the community. It's another example I think that we should promote around the country. That look at what happens in Colorado with the help of DIA.
If you get a chance, Sean, take some B-roll of those multifunction equipment.
Yeah.
And to your point, Mark, with the price, like the price is set. So it doesn't matter if you are Eads or Centennial Airport, the price is set for both. So it doesn't matter how deep your checkbooks are, the price is the same for everybody. So everybody comes in on a level playing field.
I live on a little airport, so I went home last night and showed this picture to my wife and said, I think that this will fit in the garage. But we only have about 10 operations a month, so I don't think there's a real need.
Well, as an airport manager and owner myself.
And Mr. Payne, if you would like to be a publicly accessible airport?
No.
Okay.
Other than Mark Van Tine and Kent.
Yeah.
That's why it's called Rancho Pizarro.
All right, we're going to move on to legislative issues, and I think Dave, you're going to lead us through that.
I am. I'll just talk real briefly, Mr. Vice Chair, about the implementation progress that our divisions.
What's that? What's going on?
There we go. Thank you. All right, it adds two pilot community members to the Aeronautics Board from defined affected communities. Those new positions will join the CAB on December 19th, which is the cycle for the rest of the CAB member terms. It adds one ex officio, non-voting member to the CAB from the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment. Most significant part is, I'll talk more in detail quickly about this, is it requires certain airports in those affected communities to meet additional criteria to be eligible for our division discretionary grants. And it clarifies that eligible CDAG discretionary grant projects include unleaded avgas transition projects and technical assistance to airports, noise monitoring systems, and electric aircraft charging infrastructure. And then lastly, you all addressed this just a few minutes ago, it requires us to allocate the lesser of $1.5 million or 10% of our approved CDAC program level for a given year, specifically to projects supporting the transition to unleaded avgas. So the biggest and most profound impact for us on our CDAC program was the provision that we determine which airports we have identified as being located in this is right out of the bill, densely populated residential area, or as having a significant number of flights over a densely populated residential area. So I think as we took a look at our airport system, it's pretty broad. It puts a lot of responsibility on us to determine that. After looking at that, a little reality check with our friends at the Attorney General's office to see if we were tracking with the bill. In their opinion, we identified 5 airports in Colorado as meeting that criteria. It's not all 66 of our airports. It's Erie, Longmont, Boulder, Rocky Mountain Metro, and Centennial. So I think certainly those are the airports that are pretty clearly meet those criteria. So what that means is that those airports have some additional things they have to do to be eligible for our CDAC program. By next year, they have to have a plan in place to transition to unleaded avgas. And so we'll see how that goes. But the biggest one is that each of them had to have a voluntary noise abatement program in place that met specific elements outlined in the bill, and I won't go into those. The good news is all 5 of those airports have noise abatement programs in place already. They will have to be adjusted, I think, to some degree to meet the criteria of the bill. But on August 7th, we had a meeting right here in this room with the airport directors of all 5 of those airports to run through those face-to-face with them. They're all very much aware of what's going on, and those will all be, they've all said they will update those with us prior to us. I would like to give a really special shout out. I think Mike Frontefellow is still on from Centennial. I would say that of the 5 airports, Centennial has the most comprehensive existing noise abatement program of the 5 airports. And Mike was very gracious about offering up their plan to other airports to use as a template if they were interested. So really appreciate Mike being willing to do that. So we expect that all those airports will be in compliance with that by the CDAC program for 2025. With that, you'll recall at the June 7th board meeting in Vail, we did have a member of the public ask why grants that were awarded specifically to Rocky Mountain Metro Airport prior to May 17th were not subject to the provisions of the bill. And our answer was quite simply at that time, those grants were applied for and awarded by the CAB and concurred with by the governor well before the May 17th effective date of the bill, and thus were not subject to its provisions. That position has since been validated by the Attorney General's office, and we're in the process of articulating that to people that ask. So you get asked about that. Pretty simple. May 17th was the date. Everything after. That's really the update on that. We'll continue to give you regular updates on our implementation because we've got some more work to do on how that goes. But if anybody has any questions, happy to answer those right now. But we'll do that, and then working with the governor's office to see who those new board members might be to join us in December. I do expect that one will probably be from the north side of town and one will be from the south side of town. I think that's probably how that will shake out, but don't know who those folks will be quite yet. Maybe we'll know towards the end of October, I suspect. Typically, that's when the December appointments are sort of known by the governor's team.
Well, onboarding them and it's going to be an important process.
And we'll make sure we do that very effectively like we do with all, because we will also have a new board member from the Eastern Plains. When Mr. Tedesco resigned earlier this year, the governor said, we'll just replace that position at the same time if you can live with your 6 members. And we said, you bet. So,
somehow we'll get by.
Somehow get by, yeah. That's all I have, Mr.
Questions or comments from the board? All right, we're going to move on to item 12, which is proposed calendar, and that's again you, Dave.
You bet. Our next regular meeting will be here at our offices on Wednesday, October 9th at 1 o'clock. The December 11th meeting will be also out here at 1 o'clock. That'll be our last meeting of the current. We'll turn it over to Caitlin to go through 12.3, which is the 2025 CAB meeting calendar that includes the adjustment to the week of the month that we talked about yesterday at our workshop.
So per yesterday's workshop, we presented 2 different options for next year's meetings. We previously have usually chosen the second Wednesday, but due to the timing of financials, it makes more sense for the few meetings that aren't paired with CAOA or the Transportation Commission to move that to the third Wednesday. So this one reflects meetings being the third Wednesday of the month when they're on our regular scheduled days, with the exception of CAOA and when we meet with the Transportation Commission. Just so we have Bryce's financials in the packet will hopefully come out all as one big thing, so you're not looking for something else later. So this is the 6 meetings that we'll have throughout the year for 2025 that obviously will be changed as needed, but this is currently what will be proposed for the 2025 meetings.
Okay.
That's it for me. We just need action so we can post it on the website.
No, I understand. Any comments or questions?
That's the same exact calendar as we got. We get them.
There were 2 options yesterday, and this is the one that shows the second Wednesday instead of or the third Wednesday instead of the second.
All right.
Yes, other than that, it's exactly the same as yesterday.
Okay, would entertain a motion to accept the calendar as published.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the calendar passes. Thank you. Final agenda item, other issues, discussion by the board. First, start with that. Anything from the public?
Nobody online.
One comment I have, and I hope I'm sure I'm speaking for the board. Each year we go through the strategic planning process, and yesterday was what the staff what you put together and material that we covered and the ground that we covered. We talked about some pretty important issues. But thank you for your work to make that an efficient day. And hopefully I know it's good for you, but it's certainly good for the board too. So yesterday was a day well spent. So thank you. So Kent, do you have anything? I'm going to let you close out the meeting.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there with you. It's a great meeting and look forward to our next one.
Okay. With that, I think we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.